What is up? This is Mike Myers H2O coming with the Sitting Bull introduction. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Investigations coming up next. Sitting Bull was born on land later included in the Dakota Territory sometime between 1831 and 1837. In 2007, Sitting Bull's great-grandson asserted from family oral and tradition that Sitting Bull was born along the Yellowstone River, south of present-day Miles City, Montana. He was named Hiko Palazzo. Sorry if I'm pronouncing all these wrong. Please forgive me. Jumping Badger at birth and nicknamed Hakuchizuwa, or slow, in allusion to his careful, unhurried nature. When Sitting Bull was 14 years old, he accompanied a group of Lakota warriors, which included his father and his uncle Four Horns, in a raiding party to take horses from a camp of Crow warriors. He displayed bravery by riding forward and counting coup on one of the surprise Crow, which was witnessed by the other mounted Lakota. Upon return to camp, his father gave sobriety feast at which he confirmed his own name upon his son. The name Takawa Lochawa in the Lakota language roughly translates to Buffalo Bull who sits down, but Americans commonly refer to him as Sitting Bull. Either Sitting Bull's father was known as Jumping Bull at this ceremony before the entire band. Sitting Bull's father presented his son with an eagle feather to wear in his hair, a warrior's horse, and a hardened buffalo hide shield to mark his son's passage into manhood as a Lakota warrior. During the Dakota War of 1862, in which Sitting Bull's people were not involved, several bands of eastern Dakota people killed an estimate 300 to 800 settlers and soldiers in south central Minnesota in response to poor treatment by the government and an effort to drive the whites away. Despite being employed in the American Civil War and the United States Army titled in 1863 and 1864, even against bands that had not been involved in the hostilities. In 1864, two bridges of about 2,200 soldiers under Brigadier General Afosoko attacked the village. The defenders were led by Sitting Bull, Gallon, and Akapedia. The Lakota and the Dakota were driven out, but skirmishing continued into August at the Battle of the Badlands. In September, Sitting Bull and about 100 Akapia Lakota encountered a small party near what is the Memory, North Dakota. They had been left behind by a wagon train abandoned by Captain James L. Flisk to effect some repairs to overturn wagon. When he led an attack, Sitting Bull was shot and left hit by a soldier. The bullet exited through the small of his back, and the wounded was not serious. Red Cloud's War. From 1866 to 1868, Red Cloud, a leader of the Adwala Lakota, fought against U.S. forces attacking their forts in an effort to keep control of the Powder River County and present-day Montana in support of Red Cloud. Sitting Bull led numerous war parties against Fort Berthold, Fort Stevenson, and Fort Beaufort and their allies from 1865 through 1868. The uprising has come to known as Red Cloud's War. By early 1868, the U.S. government desired a peaceful settlement to the conflict. It agreed to Red Cloud's demands that the U.S. abandon Forts Phil Kearny and C.F. Smith's Gala, the Hukapawa, and the other residents of Hukapawa, Blackfeet, and Yukon.
Can you tell me your name?
From the tour,
There's anything behind you guys.
signed a form of treaty of Fort Lamia on July 2nd, 1868, at Fort Rice near Bismarck, North Dakota. Sitting would do not propose to sell any part of my country. He continued his hit and run attacks on forts in the upper Minnesota about the late 1860s and early 1870s. Events between 1866 and 1868 mark a historic debated period of Sitting Bull's life. According to historian Stanley Vest, interviews with the surviving Hukapawa in 1930, Sitting Bull was made supreme chief of the whole Sinoak Nation at the historians and archaeologists later reflected this since Lakota society was highly centralized. Lakota bands and their elders and decisions including whether or not to wage war.
Sitting Bull, are you here? It's alright if you don't want to make your presence known. Can you speak through this device?
Great Sinoax War of 1876. I'm so sorry if I pronounced that wrong. In 1871, the North Pacific Railway conducted a survey from route across the northern plains. Sitting Bull's hand of Kapawa continued to attack migrating parties of forts in the late 1860s and in 1871. The Northern Pacific Railway conducted a survey for a route across the northern plains. People returned the following year, accompanied by federal troops. Sitting Bull and the Kapawa for the savior was increased again, but Sitting Bull's forces resisted the survey most viciously. The Panic of 1873 forced the Northern Pacific Railway backers such as J. Cook into bankruptcy, which held the construction of the railroad through Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota territory. After the 1848 discovery of gold in the Sierra Nevada and dramatic gains in new wealth from it, other men became interested in the potential for gold mining in the Black Hills. In 1874, LT called George Armstrong Custer led a military expedition from Fort Abraham Lincoln near Biswick to explore the Black Hills for gold and determine a suitable location for a military fort in the hills. Custer's announcement of gold in the Black Hills triggered the Black Hills Gold Rush. Tensions increased between the Lakota and the European Americans seeking to move into the Black Hills. Although Sitting Bull did not attack Custer's expedition in 1874, the U.S. government was increasingly pressured by citizens to open the Black Hills to mining and settlement. Failing in an attempt to inaugurate a purchase or less of the hills, the government in Washington had to find a way around the promise to protect the Sinoaks and their land as specific in the 1868 Treaty of Fort Laramie, and it was alarmed in reports of Sinoaks dispersion, some of which were encouraged by Sitting Bull.
Okay. What do you want me to move forward for? Are you around me?
1800s.
1800s. Okay. Is that where you're from? What happened?
Reparation to move onto the reservation, known that not all would likely comply, as February of 1876. Interior Department certified as hostile those bands who continue to live off the reservation. This certification allowed the military to pursue Sitting Bull and other Lakota bands as hostiles. Based on tribal and oral histories, historian Margaret Liberty theorizes that many Lakota bands allied with the Cheyenne during the Plains Wars because they thought the other nation was under attack by the U.S. Given the connection, she suggests the major war should have been called the Great Cheyenne War. Since 1860, the Northern Cheyenne had led several battles among the Plains Indians before 1876, and the U.S. Army had destroyed 7 Cheyenne camps, more than those of any other nation. Other historians, such as Robert M. Utility and Jeremiah Green, also use Lakota testimony that they have concluded the Lakota coalition, of which Sitting Bull was the Astable head, was the primary target of the federal government's perfection campaign. During the period of 1868 and 1876, Sitting Bull's development into one of the most important Native American political leaders after the 28th of Fort Laramie, 1868, and the creation of the Great Siwak Reparation. Many Turanza Siwak warriors, such as Red Cloud of the Angola and Spotted Tail and Burl, moved in reside permanently of the reservations. They were largely dependent for submissive on the U.S. Indian agencies. Many other chiefs, including members of Sitting Bull's Hakapaya band, such as Gaul, at times lived temporarily at agencies they needed supplies at a time when white encroachment and the depletion of buffalo herds reduced their resources and challenged Native American independence. In 1875, the Northern Cheyenne Hakapaya, Arjali, Sans Art, and Manachali camped together for sun dance with both the Cheyenne Medicine Man, White Bull, or Ice, and Sitting Bull in association. This communal alliance preceded their fighting together in 1876. Sitting Bull had a major revelation. Sitting Bull's refusal to adopt any dependence on the U.S. government meant that at times he arrayed a small band of warriors lived isolated on the plains when Native Americans were threatened by the United States. Numerous members from various bands and other tribes, such as the Northern Cheyenne camp to Sitting Bull's camp, as a petition for strong medicine developed as they continued to evade the European Americans. After the ultimatum on January 1st, 1876, when the U.S. Army began to track down its hostiles of Sioux and others living off the reservation, Native Americans gathered at Sitting Bull's camp. He took an active role in their engaging this utility camp. He sent scouts to the reservation to recruit warriors. He told the Kapawa to share supplies with those Native Americans who joined them. An example of his generosity was Sitting Bull's provision for Wooden Legs, Northern Cheyenne tribe. They had been improvised by Captain Reynolds March 17, 1876, attacked and fled to Sitting Bull's camp for safety. Over the course of the first half of 1876, Sitting Bull's camp continually expanded as natives joined him for safety in numbers. His leadership had attracted warriors and families, creating an extensive village extended in more than 10,000 people. LT Seal Cluster came across the large camp on June 25th, 1876. Sitting Bull did not take a direct military role in the ensuing battle. Instead, he acted as a spiritual leader. A week prior to the attack, he had performed a sun dance in which he feasted and sacrificed over 1,000 pieces of flesh from his arms. Battle of the Little Bighorn. On January 25, 1876, Cluster scouts discovered Sitting Bull's camp along the Little Bighorn River, known as the Greasy Grass River to the Lakota.
Smoking reviews, I don't do much of those anymore because all I do is get age restricted. But
Sitting Bull, born 1831, died 1837. Grand River, Dakota Territory, U.S. Died December 15th, 1890, aged 53 to 57. Cause of death: gun wound, resting place and known for Hukapā Lakota, holy man and leader. Spouses light hair, four robes, women snow on her, seen by her nation, scarlet woman. Crowfoot, son of many horses' daughter, standing holy daughter. Parents: Jumping Bull's father, her holy door mother, White Bull nephew, One Bull nephew, Flying Hawk nephew, Amy LaPollette great grandson. After being ordered to attack, Custer's 7th Cavalry troops lost ground quickly and were forced to retreat. Sitting Bull's followers led into battle by Crazed Horse Contract and ultimately defeated Custer while surrounding the lane sedge of the other two battalions led by Reno and Benton. The Native Americans' victory celebrations were short-lived. Public shock and outrage at Custer's defeat and death, and then the government's outstanding of the military completely of the remaining Stoics led the Department of War to assign thousands more soldiers to the area over the next year. New American military forces pursued the Lakota, forcing many of the Native Americans to surrender. Sitting Bull refused to do so, and May 1877 led his band across the border of the Northwest Territories, Canada. He remained in exile for years near Wood Mountain, refusing to pardon and chance to return. Then choosing the border to Canadian territory, Sitting Bull was met by the Mounties of the region during this meeting. James Morrow Wallace, commander of the Northwest Mounted Police, explained to Sitting Bull that the Lakota were now on British soil and must obey British law. Wallace established that he enforced that law equally and that every person in the territory had a right to justice. Wallace became a validate for Sitting Bull, and the two became good friends for the remainder of their lives. While in Canada, Sitting Bull also met with Crowfoot, who was the leader of the Blackfeet, long-term powerful enemies of the Lakota and Cheyenne. Sitting Bull wished to make peace with the Blackfeet Nation and Crowfoot. As an activist for peace himself, Crowfoot he originally accepted the tobacco peace offering. Sitting Bull was so impressed by Crowfoot that he named one of his sons earlier after him. Sitting Bull and his people stayed in Canada for 4 years due to smaller size of the buffalo herds in Canada. Sitting Bull and his men found it difficult to find enough food to feed their starving people. Sitting Bull's presence in the country led to increased tensions between the Canadian and United States governments. Before Sitting Bull left Canada, he may have visited Wallace for a final time and left a ceremonial headdress as a memento. Hunger and desperation officially forced Sitting Bull and 186 of his family and followers to return to the United States and surrender on July 19th, 1881. The Sitting Bull had his young son Crowfoot surrender his Winchester rifle to Major David H. Brother, the commanding officer of Fort Beaufort. Surrender my rifle in the parlor and commanding officer quarters. In the ceremony the next day, he told the 4 soldiers, 20 warriors, and other guests in the small town that he wished to regard the soldiers and the white race as friends, but he wanted to know who would teach his son the new ways of the world. 2 weeks later, after waiting in vain for other members of his tribe to follow him from Canada, Sitting Bull and his band were transferred to Fort Yates, the military post located adjacent to Standing Rock Agency. This reservation straddles the present-day boundary between North and South Dakota. Sitting Bull and his band of 186 people were kept separate from the other Hukapawa. Gathered the agency, U.S. Army officials were concerned that he would stir up trouble among recently surrendered northern bands. On August 26, 1881, he was visited the U.S. Senator Taker William Saladin, who counted 12 people in the Hukapawa leaders and a family and 41 families, totaling 195 people were recorded in Sitting Bull's band. The military decided to transfer Sitting Bull and his band to Fort Randolph to be held as prisoners of war loaded onto a steamboat. The band of 172 people was sent down the Missouri River to Fort Randolph near present-day Pixome, South Dakota, on the southern border of the state, where they spent the next 20 months. They were allowed to return north to the Standing Rock Agency in May of 1883. Annie Oakley. In 1884, show promoter Alvin Allen asked agent James McClellan to allow Sitting Bull to tour parts of Canada and the northern United States. The show was called the Sitting Bull Connection. It was during this tour that Sitting Bull met Annie Oakley in present-day Minnesota. Sitting Bull was so impressed with Oakley's skills with firearms that he offered 65, equal to $2,275 a day, for a photographer to take a photo of the two together. Admiration and respect were mutual. Oakley started that Sitting Bull made a great pet of her, and observing Oakley, Sitting Bull's respect for the young sharpshooter grew. Oakley was quite modest in her attire, deeply respectful of others, and had a remarkable stage person despite being a woman who stood only 5 feet in height. Sitting Bull felt that she was gifted by supernatural means in order to shoot so accurately with both hands. As a result of his esteem, he subsequently adopted her as a daughter in 1884. He named her Little Sure Shot, a name that Oakley used through her career. A Wild West Show. In 1885, Sitting Bull was allowed to leave the reservation to go Wild Westin with Buffalo Bill. Cody's Buffalo Bills earn about $50 a week, equal to $1,750 a day, for riding once around the area, where he was a popular attraction, although it rumored that he cursed his audience in his native tongue during the show. Historian Yelda contends that he did not. Historians have reported that Sitting Bull gave speeches about his desire for education for the young and reconciling relations between the Sioux and whites. Historian Edward Lazarus wrote that Sitting Bull reportedly cursed his audience in Lakota in 1884 during an opening address celebrating the completion of the Northern Pacific Railway. According to Michael Hilsick, Sitting Bull declared in Lakota, I hate all white people. You are thieves and liars. You have taken away our land and made us outcasts. The translator, however, read the original address, which had been written as a gracious act of amity, and audience, including President Grant, was left none the wiser. Sitting Bull stayed with the show for 4 months before returning home. During that time, audiences considered him a celebrity and romanticized him as a warrior. He earned a small fortune by charging for his autograph and picture, although he often gave his money away to the homeless and beggars. The Ghost Dance Movement. Sitting Bull returned to the Standing Rock Agency after working Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. The tension between Sitting Bull and Agent McGlaughlin increased, and each became warier of the other over several issues, including division and sale of parts of the Great Sioux Reservation. In 1889, Indian rights activist Caroline Woodland in Brooklyn, New York City, a member of the National Indian Defense Association, reached out to Sitting Bull, acting to be his voice secretary and Praetor and Activate. She joined him together with her young son Christy at his compound on the Grand River, sharing with him and his family some family home and hearth. During a time of harsh winters and long droughts and volcanoes, Sioux Revelation, a Appalachian Indian named Wakava, spread a religious movement from present-day Nevada east to the plains that presaged a resurrection of the native. It was known as the Ghost Dance Movement because it called on the Indians to dance and chant for the rising up of deceased relatives and the return of the buffalo The dance includes shirts that were said to stop bullets when the movement reached Standing Rock. Sitting Bull allowed the dancers to gather at his camp, although he did not appear to participate in the dancing. He was viewed as a key indicator alarm spread to nearby white settlements. The death of Sitting Bull. In 1890, James McClellan, the U.S. Indian agent at Fort Yates on Standing Rock Agency, feared that the Lakota leader was about to flee to revelation with the ghost dancers, so he ordered the police to arrest him. On December 14, 1890, McLaughlin drafted a letter to Harry Bullhead, an Indian agency policeman named as Bullhead, in the letter's beginning, which included instructions and a plan to capture Sitting Bull. The plan called for the arrest to take place at dawn on December 15th and devised the use of a light spring wagon to facilitate removal before his followers could rally. Bullhead decided against using the wagon. He intended to have the police officers force Sitting Bull to mount a horse immediately after the arrest. Around 5:30 a.m. on December 15th, 39 police officers and 4 volunteers approaching Sitting Bull's house. They surrounded the house, knocked, and entered. Bullhead told Sitting Bull that he was under arrest and led him outside. Sitting Bull and his wife nosily stalled for time for the camp awaken and men converged at the house. As Bullhead ordered Sitting Bull to mount a horse, he said that the Indian Affairs agent would see the chief and that Sitting Bull could then return to his house. When Sitting Bull refused to comply, the police used force on him. The Sioux in the village were enraged. Catch the Bear, a Lakota Shudbred, his rifle and shot Bullhead, who response fired his revolver into the chest of Sitting Bull. Another police officer, Red Tomahawk, shot Sitting Bull in the head, and Sitting Bull dropped to the ground. Sitting Bull died between 12 to 1 p.m. A close quarters fight erupted, and within minutes, several men were dead. The Lakota killed 6 police immediately, and 2 more died shortly after the fight, including Bullhead. Police killed Sitting Bull and 7 of his supporters at the site, along with 2 horses. Following the Sitting Bull's death, his cabin on the Grand River was taken to Chicago for use as an exhibit. The 1893 World Columbian Exposition and T.G.'s dancers also performed at the exhibition on September 14, 1989. The U.S. Postal Service released a Great American Series 28 cents postage stamp featuring a likeness of the leader. On March 6, 1996, Standing Rock College was renamed Sitting Bull College in his honor. The college serves as an institution of higher education on Sitting Bull's home, Standing Rock in North Dakota and South Dakota. In August 2010, a researcher led by Askley Welsler, an ancient DNA expert in the University of Copenhagen, announced his intention to sequence the genome of Sitting Bull with approval of his descendants and use a hair sample obtained during his lifetime. In October 2021, my fault, Welsler confronted Lakota writer and activist Ari Lopate's contention that he was Sitting Bull's great-grandson and his 3 sisters were Sitting Bull's biological great-grandchildren. That is it for the introduction. On to the investigation.